Good evening, everyone. Today at approximately 3:45 p.m., an off-duty officer was traveling on Blue Diamond near I-15 when a subject attempted to cut him off. The subject tried to cut him off a couple different times, finally pulling up next to the officer's driver's side window, where he fired at the officer. The vehicle then fled, and the officer attempted to follow behind. The vehicle fled through heavy traffic and ended up rear-ending a vehicle. When the vehicle was rear-ended, the officer caught up to the subject and identified himself as a police officer. The subject was still armed at this time, but he did exit the vehicle and dropped his handgun. Right then, an NHP officer arrived at the scene to assist the officer, at which time the subject was taken into custody. The subject was transported to UMC for a complaint of injuries. The officer was not injured, and as of right now, our investigation indicates that no one was hurt or injured by the shots being fired by the suspect. The driver of the vehicle that was rear-ended was transported to UMC for minor injuries. Again, no one was injured in the incident. However, it did cause significant traffic delays.
Are you guys considering this a road rage incident?
Well, at this point, obviously, we're still investigating. It does appear that the subject was attempting to cut him off several times. So the investigation will tell what, in fact, his motive was.
Are you providing any details as far as the suspect age? Is this a local individual? Any details on that suspect?
We're still investigating this, but he is identified. So if you follow up with our public information office, we will have that information ready for you.
How many shots did this person fire at the off-duty officer?
At this point, our investigation shows that he did fire several shots. However, we're still looking into exactly how many times that was. One shell casing was recovered, but the investigation is ongoing.
Is there any indication that this guy knew that he was an officer in any capacity?
Well, at this moment, we believe that the suspect knew he was an officer when the officer identified himself as he rear-ended the citizen in the vehicle. But we don't know whether or not he knew prior to that.
Was there any indication as far as where the bullets entered? Did they enter through the front window of the vehicle, through the side window?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear your question.
Can you talk about where the bullets entered the police officer, or the off-duty officer's vehicle?
Okay, so as I stated before, at this moment, we haven't been able to locate any impacts. So no one was injured that we know of by the suspect firing the handgun. But we're still investigating, and we're attempting to locate where those rounds may have impacted.
And can you talk about the traffic situation right now for drivers? What area is blocked off? Where can people need to get to?
Yes.
Lieutenant Jose Hernandez here updating the media on what happened out on Blue Diamond near the 15. Apparently this guy pulled up on an off-duty officer, and really it sounds like road rage is what he describes, and the man fired at the officer several times. The officer tried to follow him through traffic. The suspect then rear-ended another car, and that's when the officer caught up with him. And once this guy got out of the car, the officer said, I'm a police officer, and he dropped his weapon and surrendered, essentially.
My goodness, and thankfully no one was hit by any of those bullets fired by that driver on the I-15 just before rush hour.
Right, and you heard the lieutenant say that they're not sure if this guy knew that he was firing at a police officer because he was off duty. Certainly he knew, and the officer identified himself as such, but really no motive given why this guy would come up on this off-duty cop and just start firing his gun at him.
Or trying to cut him off. He said he tried to cut him off several times, so we were not quite sure if he knew or if there was some sort of road rage incident in which they, got into a dispute, and then he tried to cut him off. But that's all we know right now from Lieutenant Hernandez, saying he tried to cut off that officer several times and then eventually fired shots.